Alrighty, we should be all set. So y'all can get started. I'm just here for any Zoom difficulties that may arise. So I'll just be in the background. You can ignore me.
Any more Zoom difficulties?
Yes.
Thank you very much back there.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, then I was just going to take roll of the people I can see. So I see, in addition to myself, I see Steve, I see Franklin, Hayden, Kevin, and the mayor. Did I miss anyone?
No.
No, Harry is probably not going to be able to join us until later if he makes it.
All right. And so that's our roll. That gives us.
Oh. And Norma's just joined
Norma.
us.
See, this is the frustrating part about doing this on my phone. Hello, Norma.
Hello.
We'll add you to the roll. You made it just in under the wire. So I believe, and I'm going by memory because again, I switched to my phone, but I believe the next item in our agenda is to approve the minutes that Kevin circulated of our last meeting. Did anyone have any comments on the minutes before we do that? All right, then hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the minutes of our November meeting.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? I will say we're gonna have a little problem with hand voting tonight because I can only see 4 of us at a time.
Aye.
Okay,
I think you've gotten everybody.
good enough. We have approved the minutes. Let me try to pull up, even though it may cause more problems. Let me try to pull up. Does anybody have the agenda in front of us that we circulated? Maybe I can get some assistance from the group.
Let me see if
I would suspect that we may be moving next to our working
Well,
group.
the next thing on the agenda was the working group reports.
Mhm. Before we get to the working group reports, because I think this sort of touches on the working groups and how they're currently constituted, I did just want to note, for those of you who may not have already heard this, I think Steve referenced in our last meeting that he might need to leave our council shortly due to a change. Sorry, I'm getting some background noise. Due to change in circumstances, and that has come to pass. So I believe, Steve, is this going to be your last meeting with us? Maybe he already left.
No, he's there.
Sorry, he's muted. Yes, it is.
Okay. You may have resigned in the middle of the meeting. I don't know. Okay, well, we are, as with our other members who have left, very saddened to lose your active participation. Steve has very kindly offered to, although because he is leaving Highland Park, he cannot be an alternate member like Franklin and Natalie. He's still offered to stay on in a sort of consulting capacity because he's done a lot of budgeting, budget working group work. And so if we need some information on an as needed basis, he's offered to help as much as he can.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that on behalf of the mayor's council. So that, I think I may have left this off the agenda, but I try to keep it on every time. I don't know. I mean, I think we just need to focus early on in the next year on making sure we get some more people on this equity council because we need some help, and the work that we're doing needs more workers.
Jeff, if I could just,
Yeah, go ahead.
Steve also represented the NAACP for us. And I'm wondering, Steve, if there's another Highland Park resident in the local chapter that you would recommend for.
Yeah, I was gonna reach out to Bruce and see if he would recommend anybody,
Okay,
any of the Highland Park residents. So I will do that
great.
shortly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That would be great. And I will just circulate to everyone. I mean, I don't know. I think we're at the point now where we are missing I think we're missing one HRC representative, and I think we are now, I don't know whether the NAACP representative is part of our bylaws, but it certainly would be nice whether it is or not. But I think we're also just sort of missing some at-large bodies. And so I think at this point, it might be appropriate, if it's okay with you, Mayor, for all of us to continue reaching out through whatever networks we have. And I would particularly say to the communications working group, as you continue to listen to input and feedback from the different community groups that you're talking to, that if you come across somebody who might be interested in joining, that you put them in touch with the mayor as soon as possible.
Jeff,
But
if you could,
yeah.
well, I'm sorry for interrupting you again. If you
okay.
could let me know how many open positions we have, perhaps at the next council meeting as part of my report, I can also make a general request for anyone interested in working with us on these things to reach out.
That sounds good. I think at this point we have I think we have 5 vacancies, but I'll double check that tomorrow.
Okay, that would be helpful.
I think
Thank
it's
you.
about 5. I think it's about 5.
Yeah, we have 10 voting members of the Equity Council, and I believe we're missing half. So yeah, I'll double check that and confirm it for you no later than tomorrow. And so having dealt with, well, we haven't dealt with it, but having discussed that a little bit, why don't we go into the working group reports? I will start the working group that I facilitate, the policies and procedures working group, does not have an update since our last meeting. I am overdue to contact Kevin and Carolyn and get a meeting of our working group together so that we can focus on the policy and procedure aspects of CCRBs. And I think we also need to communicate with the mayor about anything that she may have learned about the sort of developments in the CCRB legislation and where we're at on that point. Similarly, I don't believe the CCRB working group has met since our last meeting, and we need to really do that. The CCRB working group is shorthanded, but we need to get together and have a brainstorming session about the 2 big picture questions that we assigned ourselves to work on. So Franklin and Norma, I will be talking to you hopefully this week about maybe getting together a meeting. So I know that the communications and budget working groups both gave me written reports that I did not circulate because they came in after I circulated the agenda. But if someone from communications wants to talk.
Sure. We've got 2 listening sessions set up for this coming Wednesday. One at 5:30 on Zoom that will be with a rabbi in town and a member of the Jewish community. The second will be with a pastor and other possible members of his congregation. Natalie set up both of the meetings. We've been having great difficulties in trying to convene the Latina group. We've been working with Pastor Amos Cayley at the church, and I've now sent him 2 messages with no response after getting an affirmative response at the beginning. And I contacted 2 groups in New Brunswick that Norma had mentioned to me and never heard back, though I've only contacted them once. So I could try again. But if anybody has any leads there, that would be very helpful. We're having real difficulties,
I have a question. Are you looking for just any resident or residents that are involved in certain things in the community?
At this point, I mean, the latter would be the best, Norma, but we would be looking for any residents as long as, there's some sense that they may be representing different parts of the community so that, younger, older, have been in Highland Park longer, less long, male, female, that kind of thing. That would be really helpful.
Okay.
Does anyone not fit into one of those categories?
Well, it's more trying to get across, Jeff, that we want variation because we don't want to end up, 3 white or let's say 3 males, all 50 years old, and take that to be the sense of the community. So it's systematically
for
trying to
somebody-
build in some variation.
You're looking for people who add some level of representation to the discussion is what I'm
Yeah.
under.
And,
Okay.
Natalie keeps saying quite correctly that we can't assume that the people we're talking to represent the community in its totality, but at least we're getting some variation across the community.
And Kevin, is it, sorry, is it, these are to like the type of forms you're having is like a group discussion, a type of focus group?
Well, we're trying to cover 3 things, Franklin. One is, how do people think, what are the circumstances and conditions that they think make them feel safe outside their homes? What are the circumstances that make them feel unsafe?
Mhm.
So that we get a sense, and, so that would bring in, the role of the police, but not be restricted to that.
Yeah.
And then the third is we want to get their views on the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Do they know about it?
Question-
What would they look for it? And that kind of thing.
My question is the format. Are you looking to do just like focus group type things? Or the reason I'm
Right.
asking is because I think individuals who you might want to reach out to would be many of the what should we call it, workers here in Highland Park. So I know where I go do laundry in both Wayne's Wash and University Place. I know them very well. I mean, and that's why I was asking,
Yeah.
I guess this would be like interviews that you can do, Soul, the
I was
restaurant.
gonna suggest that. I was gonna say you could walk into a place like La Casita. They live in Highland Park. The
Mhm.
owners live in Highland Park. They employ people from Highland Park, and they're Latino. So places like that, you could just reach out, whether in person, just pop in and talk to them. They're very welcoming, very involved in the community. So I could reach out to them. I know them a little bit, but yeah, there's a lot of businesses that that you can reach out to, and through those people make other connections.
Sure, that's a
Excuse me
great
one
idea.
second. I'm
folks.
sorry, but those phone calls I was getting, Jeff, just so you know,
Mhm.
Carolyn Timmons can't get into the meeting.
I wonder what we can do to help with that. She should have, everyone was able to use their unique Zoom links?
I was, yeah.
Mhm.
Shuttle, are you still back there?
I am. So this person is on the council.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what I can do right now is find their email and email them again, their personal link. Maybe that would help.
Okay, I'm going to text her and tell her to watch your email.
Yes, I will work on that literally right now. So hopefully we can
Thank
get
you.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ordinarily, I would be able to do that, but because my computer has rejected me, I can't email and do the Zoom at the same time. But that's, if anyone at any point loses track of their unique link, they should be able to get it from me during a meeting, ordinarily. So if you, for future reference, if you have any trouble logging in and it's because you can't seem to locate your link, just text me or send me an email, and that will usually be good enough. So Kevin, I think because now that we've sorted that out, hopefully, I think you were saying that if Norma or Franklin has ideas of people that you might be able to get in touch with, that your working group would welcome that information and try to make use of it.
Yeah, and I think those are really good suggestions. I mean, as Franklin picked up, we were hoping to kind of run these as focus groups but it's proving to be too difficult. And it may be just because it's very hard for people to find the time. So doing individual interviews in a more casual way, the way Norma was saying, would make a lot of sense. And I'd be very happy to talk to the people at La Casita.
Highland Park
So-
Pizza also.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just putting in a, mention beforehand, Norma, that's great, because it's always good when you're kind of vouched for by someone they know.
Okay,
And if I then show up out of the blue, they may be saying, what is this? But if you put in a good word for us, that it makes it much easier.
all right.
Yeah. Kevin, I know I connected you with Cookie Rivera in New Brunswick. Did you ever have any luck talking to her, or?
I had a very good conversation. Cookie was kind of saying, go out and do your work. And then come back and talk to me. And at the point that you finally, have something you've got going, to come talk to me. So she'd be great to come talk to a little later in the process. But
Yeah.
right now she was kind of sort of saying, you got some homework to do, so go do it.
I was wondering if she could connect you with people, though, that, other activists. In the
I think it
community.
fell under that kind of rubric, Steve. It
Okay.
was kind of like, go do it, and then we
I know
can connect you to people.
She's like usually pulled in about 15 different directions. She's involved in everything. So.
No, and I totally understood. It's
Okay.
kind of like, we get bombarded. You're just one more. So come talk
Yeah.
to me when you have something actually going, and then I can help.
Okay.
I mean, and the other, I guess, and because I know Amos is always busy in his multiple roles too, but I was just thinking as well, like in terms of once you talk to him or to Seth there about even talking with individuals at Global Grace Cafe as well, that represent a variety of even refugees to immigrant to, recently arrived from, other states as well. So that could be another source too, but I know it's because everyone's so busy, but that's just another idea as well.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to, Franklin, it's just the Reformed Church is super busy. And I think that's another thing where if you're coming into a place like that, you want to be vouched for, because people, especially if, people are undocumented, they're going to be thinking like, well, what is this about? So I'm hoping we'll be able to connect maybe after the first of the year, because right now they're in the midst of getting ready for Christmas and probably extremely busy.
Yeah, the whole resettling refugees from Afghanistan as well. They're really focused on that at the moment.
Yeah, so I figure there was something like that. I just wanted to convey that we've been trying, and it's just been a little difficult.
Kevin, did I hear correctly that the sort of, and I don't want to put this necessarily label on it, but the Jewish focus group that you're doing is so far two
Yeah.
people, a rabbi
Natalie-
and one resident?
Right. So a rabbi that Natalie was able to reach, and a community resident that I know. Natalie reached out to, I think, the entire list of rabbis that we knew about in town. And this is as far as she was able to get.
Okay. And I get, look, you two are doing an exceptional amount of homework here. I hope that by the end of this process, we're going to have a more, because obviously the Jewish community in Highland Park is itself extremely diverse, as all the communities of Highland Park are within themselves. But I would hate to think that we're going to sort of come back and say, okay, here's what 2 Jewish residents think about this, and this is how they were selected. But people have to respond, and I understand what Ms. Rivera has to say about, we want to have this discussion when things are more fully conceived of or whatever. But it would be really helpful to get input from various aspects of the community early on in this planning process, because I think that that's the whole idea, is talk about things early so we get people's input and not just their feedback on what we're thinking about. But
I hear you, Seth.
so that would be the
Sorry,
sales
quick
pitch that
question.
I would give to people if it were me having the conversation. And I'm sure you've tried this, but if somebody's like, well, we want to know what it looks like and then be able to talk about it, you can emphasize, well, we want to do that too. But at this stage, we want to know what people want so that we can take that into account when we're helping advise the mayor about how to do this.
I have a
So,
question.
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I've been trying to, oh, okay, bye.
A
Sorry.
technical- a technical
Kevin, I
question.
think
Sorry,
you can
everybody.
reflect that Carolyn may also be here now.
No, I've been trying since 6 PM and I just call Harry.
Okay,
Do you
but
have me?
can you see us now or as much as you want to?
I've heard you since the beginning because I
really?
came in as a webinar
Oh, I see.
and Harry changed my status.
Hmm.
So I'm
Okay.
now
On
a
the promotion?
square. Before I was not a square.
Okay. I'm sorry that you had that difficulty, Carolyn. Did we
No, it's
figure out?
okay.
Did we figure out what? Well, we'll talk again about what challenges we're all
wait.
facing with this process. But
me-
did you have something to
Okay.
add?
Oh,
I'm
there
sorry.
she is.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I could hear you. I heard the whole discussion. Franklin, I heard everybody. From 6 PM, I called the mayor and then finally I called Harry. So he got me in. So hi, everybody. I'm so sorry.
Glad you're
I'm
here.
sorry that you
Glad to see
had,
you.
whoop, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had so much trouble getting in. I was trying to send you your individual link to your to the Gmail account that we have on file. But that wasn't working for some reason. And then I kept seeing you pop up in the attendees and then dropping. And so I
Yeah,
finally
because
was,
I was coming up as
Exactly.
it was a webinar and it
Exactly,
wouldn't
yeah.
acknowledge me.
yeah.
But
And
I'm
so then when
here.
I was able to move you from the attendees into the panelists, but it kept dropping for some reason. So I'm really sorry about this. Hopefully I can research and find a solution for us so this
Thank you.
doesn't keep happening. Yeah.
Thank
Sorry
you,
about that.
Harry.
So Carolyn, now that you're fully have materialized in the meeting and aren't just listening quietly, did you have any comment to make or question about the working group report or any other things that we've discussed to this point?
No, I think Kevin gave the communications report. We're supposed to have least listening sessions this Wednesday. Is that right, Kevin? So, yeah. And then Jeff, whatever you want us to do from the other committee that I'm on.
Yeah, I'll be sending you and Kevin an email about getting a
Okay.
meeting together about
Mhm.
policies and procedures,
Mhm.
and might also loop the mayor in, so in case we have any update on the legislation.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a quick question going back to the discussion with Kevin. It's a technical question. So, I mean, I know I'm phasing into more of an alternative mode, but I was curious if technically I would be able to help to do a listening session, meaning, so I know individuals, I mean, groups of people, that, so would there be a way of ours to conduct those listening set, like one focus group? Is that so this is a technical question, would I be allowed to, even though I'm not part of the subcommittee, given my connections to it?
I think we're trying, I mean, Kevin, you can answer as much as you want for the working group itself, as far as what your preference is, but from a technical standpoint,
We'd be delighted to have
Yeah.
Franklin involved.
from a technical
Yeah.
standpoint, where there's we are trying to unsilo this council as much as we can. And if people can help each other with different aspects of different working groups, there's nothing that would prohibit that in our bylaws. And certainly from a, I think that everybody probably agrees that we should all be helping each other as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then we can talk afterwards in terms of the procedures. You guys have questions, and then we can discuss really who I'm talking about in terms of groups of people and here in Highland Park. But that fit into those we were just talking about right now.
Sounds great, Franklin.
Also, regarding outreach to Latinas, Pastor Yukon Chu is a pastor in New Brunswick, and his wife's a teacher in town, and he said he knows some Hispanics in town that that he can connect to. So Kevin, I'll just connect you two together through email.
That'd be great, Hayden.
All right.
The any other comments on the work that it sounds like is going to accelerate greatly thanks to everyone's help of the communications working group?
I do. I have one more question. Is when you approach these individuals or groups, as you know, when you're ready to speak to them, do you have like a kind of like a script that you follow and ask everybody the exact ask each group the exact same questions, or do you vary it?
Well, we have a script and we follow it.
Okay.
Obviously, if things come up that we want to follow up on further or that they bring up that we hadn't considered, we follow that as well, Norma. But we do
Okay.
have a standard script that we want to make
Mhm.
sure that we at least touch on the same points with every group. But then they add things that we didn't anticipate, which is great.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right, thanks.
Anything else on communications? All right,
Yep.
then the other working group is budget. Someone from budget want to give us a little update?
Yeah, I guess within the last month or so, we've started really focusing in on the costs of CCRBs specifically. We've been doing, some research on our own, I guess the key things that have been discovered so far are, one is we really need to, have a good understanding of kind of what the model of the CCRB, what it's going to be, whether it's going to be, because I guess there's several different kinds. There's one where the CCRB merely reviews the complaint review process that's happened internal in the police department. And there's a model that has their own investigators that do independent investigation. And then there's a model that is sort of broader and kind of takes the investigative CCRB and adds kind of what we're doing, and in that they just don't review complaints, they also review policies and procedures within the department. And their powers allow them, kind of more access to things broader than just the complaint issues. And there's obviously different costs associated with each model. The issue is, if Highland Park is going to be by itself in doing this, particularly if it has the investigative role associated with the CCRB, then the staffing requirements for that, you need at least one investigator, you need an administrator. Those are probably the two minimum kinds of employees that function would require. And then, depending on how involved it's going to get, you may need to add more. So what's going to, partly, I think, as you suggested, Jeff, sort of, breaking down the silos and really, kind of integrating the groups more. A lot of where this working group is going to go is going to be determined by, one, what the legislation allows, and two, what, how we're going to, how the council is going to recommend what kind of functions are going to be required, and accordingly what the cost is. One of the good things about this, and most of the research that I've come across so far are for significantly larger municipalities.
How large, Steve? I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, like city of New York.
Oh,
All, down to,
sorry.
and then the smaller cities are still, 100,000 people or more for the most part. There's a few CCRBs in municipalities of less than 50,000, which is kind of the cutoff point that I've seen in the research. But I haven't seen a whole lot of data on, how they operate or what they're doing yet. I haven't had gotten to dig that far. But the overall, the US DOJ did a study back in 2016 that said that for review-focused CCRBs, the cost is generally less than 1% of the public safety budget. And for investigative-focused CCRBs, it's usually around 1%. So, the manpower involved now, whether or not, those economies of scale are going to be reduced somewhat by the small size of Highland Park. So, one of the things we should be looking at is, do we go it alone, or do we try and find some sort of a consortium of like towns around us that can share assets, for example? Or will the county provide assets to local CCRBs? Those are the kinds of things that, we'll need to this somewhat. But there does seem to be, a fairly good body of work out there that, we'll have to, delve further into. But I think there's promising avenues to look at as far as coming up with potential numbers. And I think the best the working group's going to be able to do is say, if this is the cost of typical cost of an investigator, this is the typical cost of an administrator, whether you have some of your own or you share them. And I don't know if there's examples out there of smaller municipalities that have shared assets and how they divvy up the cost. But those are the kinds of questions that I think, the budget group ought to be focusing on going forward.
If I can, Steve, and
Yeah.
I know I mentioned this at the last meeting, Maplewood CCRB, I did try to reach out to the guy who was the mayor when I first started talking with them. In Maplewood, they switch around mayors every couple of years, so he's no longer the mayor. They just promote someone from council every couple of years. It's a whole different form of government from what we have here. However, there is a person that he had Councilwoman Foster and I speak to way back when we started talking about these things, who this person, I believe, is now the head of their CCRB. And if I haven't already, what I'd like to do is get the paperwork from them on how their CCRB functions. Maplewood is bigger than us, but not way bigger than us. They are in New Jersey. They've been very successful for the last few years. And so what I'd like to be able to do is get a hold of the person who is running their CCRB and or the mayor, the current mayor there, whoever that turns out to be, and see if I can maybe get them to actually come to one of either your subgroups meeting or to this general meeting, so you can all ask them questions. You tell me what you want out of that. But as far as the legislation is concerned, my understanding is that it's going to be discussed sometime in the spring again. That it's, not moving very fast, but it will be moving. So that whatever comes out of the legislation in the long run is going to affect what we can and cannot do with our own CCRB. That's not to say, and because the issue is somewhat politically charged, I don't know how quickly it's actually going to make its way through the legislature one way or the other. So I don't want us to necessarily say, well, let's wait till that legislation passes, because we don't know if it will. But Steve, I think, raises an excellent point when he talks about, is it something we want to take on ourselves? Or do we want to reach out to like-minded municipalities? You know, what comes to my mind whenever I think about like-minded local municipalities is Metuchen. I can certainly see where they are on all of this as a kind of shared service, possibly. But I would also, I also think it probably makes sense to talk to the new county prosecutor, who all our police departments report to see if maybe there's support on the county level for either some kind of joint county CCRB or funding for individual CCRBs, or would the county come up with their own format? I don't know where they stand at all. So I'm happy to reach out to both other municipality, like-minded municipalities and the county to get a better handle on where they may be on CCRBs. I think that it's something that we've been talking about a lot here in Highland Park, and I really would like to see happen. But I don't want us to go in a direction that's totally different from what may come out of the legislation and then have to revamp everything.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that the model that I think the only model that's possible now, because the investigative model, I think probably needs subpoena power to really make it work, which doesn't exist today. So it'd really be the review focused model, which basically takes, looks at what, the internal review of any complaints and, sort of determines whether or not they were adjudicated properly within the department to the best of their abilities. And there's fairly extensive training available for people on a CCRB to teach them how to do those kinds of things effectively. But I think that's my sense is that and that's probably what I can't imagine Maplewood doing much other than that now, because again, you can't really, without being able to really look at internal police documents,
Right.
Looking at, doing a investigative review would be very difficult. So it would be interesting, and until the legislation is passed, if we want to, if Highland Park wants to move forward and establish a board before that happens, it could always be established, one that does the review-based function could always be established up front, and then if greater powers are given by the legislation, then it can be adapted to fit the new framework that's allowed. But I think the review based is the major expenses associated with that, because that's something that I think the CCRB itself, it doesn't need a lot of staff. It probably needs somebody that can, because even that model allows for complaints to come in through the board rather than go directly to the police department. And it allows, and one of the interesting things that some of the things I was reading is that, boards should be set up not only to take complaints from outside the police department, but complaints from inside the department as well.
It's interesting.
That's interesting.
Kevin, did you put
Yeah,
your
I
hand
had
up on purpose? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I had a question for Gail. Gail, apropos what Steve was saying about, what a CCRB could do. As we know from our working group on on policy, it would be enormously helpful to be able to look at police disciplinary records, and we can't. Legislation before the state to be able to make these records available through Oprah. Do you have any sense of the likelihood that legislation might pass?
I wish I could say I did, but I don't. I really don't, Kevin. I know our district legislators are very supportive of this, but the southern part of the state, is like another world sometimes. So I really don't know. I could try to find out, and I could see if the League of Municipalities has a better handle on this, and I'd be happy to check with them.
If you could, that'd be very helpful.
Sure.
I did not realize that police transparency was like a pork roll, Taylor ham type situation, but I had also heard that there was opposition to it. Not that I have any kind of like direct line to the legislature, but I think it seems less likely than the CCRB bill, which hardly has any like public opposition, and yet, I had heard it was going to pass during lame duck, and now we're talking about the spring, and now so it's a slow process. We can't count on any of this stuff. And I can't see whether other people are sort of waiting to have their 2 cents because I'm doing this on my phone, but just one note that I wanted to say in response to what the mayor mentioned is I'm really interested for us to hear from Maplewood. I think that would be a great first step. I'm less excited about the concept of, I think that Steve is right. There may be some budgetary advantages to, shared services type model, like, try to find like-minded municipalities. But the one thing, and I've resisted a lot of people saying, well, we need to do this before we can do this. We need to learn everything about this before we can make any recommendation about that. But if it seems like if we were to go to Metuchen or even to the county and say, what do you want? What do you think about this? Do you want to start thinking about that? And we don't have and maybe, maybe the borough, as opposed to this equity council, has in mind a particular model or a particular goal or whatever as far as these things go. But if we go to them without an idea,
Right.
even a broad idea of what we want to do, then we're like sort of automatically sort of taking a back seat to what, they may already be moving on. And that's one of the reasons why I think, if we want to have some, even if we're doing it on a shared basis, if we want Highland Park to have a sort of say in how it looks, I think we better get better figure out what it is we want it to look like from our perspective before we start collaborating.
And
So
I think,
can I,
go ahead.
okay, so I know we've been talking to Maplewood for months and months now, I think almost since the beginning. I feel my personal opinion at this point, it's probably would be helpful to talk to any municipality that has a working CCRB group, instead of just waiting for Maplewood to get back to us. I know that, that there's a comparison between, their town and our town. However, we need to just speak to somebody that has a CCRB? How did they start it? What steps did they take in order to convene a CCRB? How are they operating? Those are really the things that we need to find out, and then we can apply that to Highland Park. But I think does Jersey City have a CCRB, or they're still working on it? Maybe we could speak to those people. We just had the mayor from Jersey City here at an event. Maybe you could reach out to him and just speak to anyone that's working as part of a CCRB or convening a CCRB, so we can have some guidance from them and collaborate instead of waiting for Maplewood. That's just my opinion. It's
Yeah.
been months, like a year.
There are very few municipalities that have CCRBs at this point in New Jersey. I don't think Jersey City is one of them.
I know they were looking into forming one, but would it not, maybe it
Well,
would
I
be
could
helpful to
chime in
just
on
reach out
this.
and see what's happening there.
I could chime in on this because I was trying for months before the summer and then over the summer. Jersey City especially. And I think you guys were in the loop with you and Jeff, or it might have been before you, Norma, when you joined. I was trying to get Asbury Park. They were starting to form it too, leading into the summer as well. So it's tough because some people respond and then others drop off the map. Spoke with those folks in Newark about it. So it's tough because some people just don't get back and others are super busy. But this is what I was trying up until the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Reaching out to others,
Yeah.
What may be helpful is that in my research on budgeting, I've come across an organization called the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. And I know I didn't really look at it, but on their website, one of the things they have is what things you need to consider if you're thinking of establishing something like this. So that may be one, just looking at what the information they have on their website. But the other thing is, I don't know if they have people that go around and meet with people like us trying to figure this thing out, and sit down and help us focus on what things we really need to focus on.
Well, let me just add a few more to these points of conversation, because it's having conversed with others about this, and the notes are in our shared drive there for that, the working CCRB. It's a lot of just basically, this is something that we've talked about with Jeff and Norman in the past too, what like the communications work is doing, trying to understand what are the conditions of Highland Park, right? Because conversing with Newark folks over there and other places is really and part of the reason why many people were not getting back was because everyone was trying to organize towards the legislative effort, leading up to it. And even now there's, communications about lame duck session. How do you push forward these bills during this lame duck? And, speaking to many stakeholders from different communities, whether immigrants and non-immigrants, there's not a lot of optimism given how things were just sort of pushed aside all of a sudden, given the elections that occurred, So I think so part of it is people were just really busy trying to organize and again, meeting. I know some organizations who've been sort of during this lame duck session trying to reorganize and trying to meet with legislators, push for the transparency bills or push for the CCRB. But I think the lessons learned from conversations, learning from others, is just understanding what are the conditions of Highland Park, what do we need to be addressing to understand what the model would be, sort of getting to what Steve was saying too, what is the functionality and the cost going to be. So I think it's really the important work of the communications of understanding what are people's perceptions of and experiences, not just perceptions, but experiences, right? We don't want to just say that this is what they think, but what have been their experiences of it? Because that's what a lot of the work has been in a sense. So I think it's a combination of these things, right?
Yeah.
What are the models, but then what are the conditions of Metuchen? What do we know? What are they trying to address there in the type of model? What is when I spoke to someone from Newark talking about the budget, they said, it's proportional. That's why they see it, given the size of the police force. When you want to think about budgets, if the police force increases, then you think about how the budget increases with the proportionality of the police force. And there's one dimension of it, but it's just say there's all these facets that I think each location is trying to answer and understand. Same with
Yeah.
Ashbury, and I had brief conversations with them. So I think it's really, the good work that's being done here in Highland Park. I'm trying to understand what are people's experiences and perceptions to really inform then also the type of model. And are those the same conditions in Metuchen? Are they the same conditions in Maplewood? So it isn't just the model, but also what are the conditions of the policing? Are they similar or not too, right? That's the really important elements of this.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mayor, did you have something else to say?
Well, the only thing, that I'm always hesitant to look at huge cities like a Newark, or a Jersey City or something that big, because they have so much more money to work with. And so, some municipalities pay the professionals that are on their CCRBs, that's why I keep looking at municipalities like Maplewood, who are faced with very similar kinds of budgetary restraints that we would be faced with. And I know, Norma, it's frustrating, having to rely on other people to help us get this information and all. So I understand, that frustration level. I just, caution us that as we look at different models, to keep in mind that we have to find a model that works for a municipality that's basically 15,000 people.
But let me add, not just population, but what are the conditions? of the
Conditions,
community?
absolutely right.
Because
Psychographics, demographics, all of that stuff.
experiences
Absolutely.
of policing, because you can have
Correct.
similar population sizes, but it doesn't mean the dynamics are very similar. And so,
And the other thing too, Franklin, you're absolutely right. So I always talk about 15,000 people that live in Highland Park, but on any given day with Route 27 pre-COVID, there were how many other people actually going through our town? Thousands and thousands of them every single day.
But Mayor,
And-
they're going through now, post-COVID. I don't want to say post-COVID because
Yeah.
we're
Yeah,
not
no, it's-
over it.
Yeah.
But look at the traffic now.
Yeah. So not, this is the dilemma that we face on all issues here. When we're talking about big issues like a CCRB, like addressing our infrastructure, etc. We're not just talking about the 15,000 people that live here, pay taxes here, send their kids to school here. Our municipality grows on the road, which the police have to address every single day, twice a day during rush hour, by thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And there, while we still have to make sure they stop at the red lights, et cetera, they don't pay for that service. We do. So, sorry, it's just one of the frustrations. We're actually in the midst of budgeting now, so it's key in my mind, and I'm sorry.
I agree with you, Mayor. I think it's not even the issue that they're on 27 and they're stopping at the lights. They're taking the side roads and they're not stopping at the stop signs, which
that's
put
very
our
true.
residents at risk. Because we are a walking town, a walking community, which I love, and a cycling community.
Right.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I don't think it's, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. It's all day long, the traffic that's coming through, connecting from Edison to New Brunswick.
Yeah.
If I just circle it back around to where we started with the budget working group, I think that one of the things I heard at the beginning was that what the cost will be will depend on what model we use, and that sort of self-evident. But I I was hoping, and I'm still sort of hoping, and it sounds like we may have some, this may be a longer project than maybe we all hope, but I was hoping that maybe the budget group, we don't know what kind of model we're eventually going to be allowed to use. We don't know what model we might want to use on an interim basis or a permanent basis if we have a different model, or whether maybe we like the Maplewood model, whatever that turns out to be. I think it would be good to get a sense from the budget working group, and I don't think we intended to ask, at least for a budget. I don't think we have nearly enough information for the budget working group
No.
to come up with a budget.
No.
I think we need to know what the cost factors are going to be. And I think the sort of work product that we would hope to get from the budget working group, at least as we discussed it in the CCRB working group when we set out the assignments, was what are the factors that would increase the costs? What are the questions that we need to answer in order to start, figuring out what the overall cost is going to be? What are things that could increase and decrease the cost? And I think you've done a really good part of that project, but that would be at least if I'm understanding the assignment correctly, I think the assignment that we want the working group to have is to come up with the questions that because ultimately the borough council and the mayor have to answer the questions, but come up with the questions that we need to know the answers to in order to figure out what the budget's going to be. And so, for instance, one thing that never occurred to me, and it reflects as much on me as anything, is the idea of hiring a full-time investigator to investigate, public safety issues as part of a CCRB. I had assumed that, the people on the CCRB would be trained to do some investigative works, but if there's going to be, if there's going to need to be somebody who goes out and looks at scenes and interviews people and things like that, I can imagine that would be somebody who would need to be a professional. But so you've already, those are the kinds of questions we need to ask. And I think that you're on the right track in that regard. I wouldn't dwell too much, at least from my perspective, I wouldn't dwell too much on, well, we need to know, in order to answer these questions, we need to know which model we're going to be using. I would try to come up with the questions for all the different models if you can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that we couldn't, complete our work until we knew more specifically what because my thought was, the budget working group can probably come up with things like, okay, here's what, if you decide your model is going to have investigators, here's what a typical investigator costs. Here's what somebody who could administer, what's kind of what government level administrator has to be that, kind of running the, that part of the model. For the members of the CCRB itself, there's fairly, this one, the group that I just identified has training for, somebody that's going to be a CCRB member that, gives them a foundation for how you look at these kinds of things. And it's pretty extensive. And I haven't seen anything that talks about the cost of it yet, but, I cannot imagine it's going to be cheap. So, among the things we can do for the actual board expenses itself is probably the principal cost there is going to be training costs. So, identify, how much it costs to train a member of the CCRB. So we can certainly price out components, and then as, because that's sort of where I thought the group should head is, here's all the potential components you can, build a CCRB infrastructure around, and how much does each piece of that component cost? And then, when you get to the point where we're actually designing, where, the council designing a CCRB, they'll be able to say, okay, we'll take, 2 of these, 3 of those, and add all the pieces together and get up, okay, here's what our budget needs to be then to do this. Because I think that's the most useful thing, and I think that's the best that we'd be able to do.
I think that's good.
Correctly, then we're going to pay for that with a toll booth that we set up at either end of either.
You know, I've been asking for that from the state for years now, Jeff. We've got that DOT highway running right through town.
I had heard that. So does anybody else have anything to say about budget?
No, good job, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I both of the working groups who have given reports tonight, meaning both of the working groups that I'm not on, you've done a couple of meetings, bringing more to the discussion and bringing some more details along. So thank you. The next item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have any members of the public present? I can't see that on my phone.
Oh, we do not.
All right. So, and I once again lost my agenda. Is there anything else besides discussing next steps? Norma, you had the agenda in front of you at some point, right?
It was here somewhere. I think I
Yeah,
lost
it is.
somewhere.
It is next
Yeah.
steps.
So, from my perspective, I think the steps are sort of self-explanatory. I think I already highlighted what my two working groups need to do next, and the ball is kind of in my court. And I looped the mayor in on the policy issues. Does anybody else have any other next steps besides just continue the work of the working groups and prospect for members to fill the vacancies?
No,
Yeah,
I think we
I-
just
you
need to keep making an effort to reaching out to Maplewood and some of the other CCRB, because I really think we need some guidance from people that are doing this, have done this before. It's like we're building a house here.
Yeah.
Like we're building the foundation right now, but we need all the other components, and then eventually we're going to need the building, the codes, and make sure that we're up to code, make sure that we have the building permits also. So we need that bill to pass in order for us to actually, so we're building a house here. And so we really need to talk to the people that are already doing this, so that we can have some guidance. It just, I don't know, I'm growing a little frustrated, but
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
it's
Norma,
just the week I've had.
just quickly on the frustration element.
And we need people. We need people.
Well, we definitely need people. I will say on the Maplewood point, I think that we have been pursuing virtually every other avenue to try to find people to talk to, but we had not called on the mayor's connections to the Maplewood community until the last meeting. And so I think we can be a little patient about getting some commitment from Maplewood to join in the discussion. But obviously I'm one of the people also who shared some frustration about pace. So let's get some more information. Let's get some more bodies in here. Does anybody else have any other next steps?
Well, I can circulate a link to that organization that I spoke of. I actually just took a quick look, and they do have one of their facts is, how to create an effective, police oversight operation. So I'll circulate that. I haven't looked at it yet, so how much value it has, I don't know, but it may be useful to people.
That sounds great, Steve. And Steve, you're next.
Harry has something. Harry?
Yeah, I think you mentioned trying to recruit more people for this committee. Did I hear that as one of the threads of what you said? And so I'll just, I'll speak. Hopefully the mayor endorses what I say. But we reached out to the high school and asked if we could have some teams on the, did you mention this already, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we've got 2 expressions of interest and I need to follow up with them.
That sounds great, because I think, and I'm not sure if this is a bylaw, just the mayor's preference that we all agree with, but I think we're supposed to have a teen member. So that would be great.
Okay.
Anybody else? Next steps? All right. Hearing none, I assume that the next item on the agenda is for us to adjourn. So I will make a motion for us to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
A second.
All in favors? So move, all in favor? Okay.
All right.
Thank
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
You
you
too.
all.
Take care.
you. Thank you, Harry, for getting me in.
Happy to
Thank
do
you.
so.
Okay.